Good evening. Welcome to the July 11th, 2022 Troy City Council meeting. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Dear God, thank you for the blessings of this day and for all the blessings you've given each and every one of us here in Troy City Hall Council Chambers, as well as throughout our entire city. We ask that you continue to be with us, providing guidance and stability to our council meeting as we work through the issues of the city's business. Please also be with our residents and business owners here in attendance this evening, and all Troy citizens throughout our great city, providing them the comfort and care they need. We ask that you always be mindful of our first responders, police and firefighters, Alliance Mobile Health as well, as they work to keep our community safe and help our residents in critical need as well. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our July 11th, 2022 Troy City Council meeting is now called to order, and I'll ask for the roll call for Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a proclamation celebrating Transportation Insight and Nolan Transportation Group for planting trees at Boland Park in the city of Troy. And with us this evening are Isaac Scherer, Maggie Hanley, and Oliver Hopton, who will accept the proclamation. So if you join me down at the podium, I'd like to present this proclamation to you. Well, no, I mean, not just bent this way. Face it. No, stay here. You're good. You're good. There we go. Close enough. I don't know. It is what it is. But so I'm going to read this proclamation into the record. A couple of us had the honor of being with some of you when we were planting the trees at Boland Park. Councilmember Hamilton was there. Councilmember Brooks were there, and some of the others were out of town. But I know they would have been there otherwise, because we really do value our trees here in the city of Troy and the work we do to promote a healthy tree city. And so we're very thankful for the work that your organizations have done to help us have even more trees. And I'm at Boland Park quite a bit, and most of the trees are doing really well. So those of us who planted, I guess we did a pretty good job. But I'm going to read this proclamation into the record, and just so everybody can hear a little bit about it. So once again, this is a proclamation celebrating Transportation Insight and Nolan Transportation Group for planting trees at Boland Park in the city of Troy. Whereas Relief Michigan, a 34-year-old nonprofit organization, partners with communities statewide to replenish community tree canopies through volunteer tree planting events. And whereas trees provide incredible benefits to the communities in which they are planted. Trees improve air and water quality, reduce stormwater runoff, improve mental wellness, reduce rates of childhood asthma, cool our neighborhoods, and enhance the commercial and economic vitality. And whereas on Earth Day in 2021, Transportation Insight, TI, and Nolan Transportation Group, NTG, committed to go for neutral and launched a sustainability program designed to help their shippers and carriers collectively lower their carbon footprint. This partnership with Relief Michigan engaged their employees in environmental stewardship and represents their commitment to support environmental groups, improving the communities they live and work in. And whereas Relief Michigan identified the opportunity at Boland Park, which Transportation Insight and Nolan Transportation Group proudly supported. On May 21st, 2022, Relief Michigan partnered with the City of Troy, TI, NTG, and the Michigan DNR Urban and Forestry Program to help plant 20 trees at Boland Park. And whereas Transportation Insight Holding Company is the combination of industry-leading logistics providers, Transportation Insight and Nolan Transportation Group. TI brings over 2 decades of multimodal expertise and technology to the logistics industry and ranks among North America's top 10 largest logistics companies. In 2022, TI and NTG employees will plant over 1,000 trees, including 2 rivers, with 12 environmental partners across the country. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Troy hereby applaud and sincerely thank TI and NTG employees Mark Antackley, Laciandra Garrett, Maggie Hanley, Stephen Hirsch, Oliver Hopton, Stephen McIsaac, Brooklyn Powers, Alex Rollick, Ashley Reed, Fadi Sayeg, Jonathan Smith, and Brianna Weichel for their work to plant 20 trees at Bullen Park. And be it further resolved that the mayor and city council of the city of Troy invite all residents to recognize and celebrate the generosity and dedication of Troy companies Transportation Insight and Nolan Transportation Group and their employees, true heroes in our Troy community. This proclamation is presented this 11th day of July 2022, signed by myself as the mayor. All members of city council have also signed it. Should I present it to you? Should I give it to you?
I didn't do any work.
Your name wasn't even in here, and you're just here for all the glory. Yeah, which is fine, but we appreciate it. I'll have it, Oliver. You want to take the proclamation? I'll hand it to you, and officially hand it to you. But thank you so much. We'll give you an applause.
Hi there. Appreciate you guys having us here tonight. As the mayor alluded to, the April 2021, our corporate team got everybody on the phone, wanted to talk about the impact that we have on the environment, considering we put thousands of trucks on the road per day. So in my opinion, this is something that was long past due. I had just said earlier on that we're actually moving offices, staying in Troy. So we love the city of Troy, appreciate everything that you guys have done. And we appreciate many more years to come. And hopefully we can add more trees to Bullen Park.
One other quick thing, I mentioned Councilmember Hamilton, Councilmember Brooks and I being there. Our DPW team and facilities grounds crew, they actually dug all the holes for us. So they were there earlier, long before we were, and did a lot of work. So thank you, Dennis and Kurt and team. We appreciate that as well. Thank you. One more thing.
I don't think I would be doing my job properly, but if you guys happen to know anybody that works in shipping and receiving and needs some trucking, please call NTG Detroit. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. There are no carryover items this evening, no public hearings, and nobody has signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, so there's no need for reply from council or management. So we will move right into regular business, as there are also no postponed items. I-1 is board and committee appointments. I do have one mayoral appointment this evening to the Downtown Development Authority, so I'll move that the mayor of the city of Troy hereby appoints Kathleen Garmo to the Downtown Development Authority for the unexpired term expiring September 30th, 2022.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve the appointment of Kathleen Garmo to the Downtown Development Authority for the unexpired term expiring September 30th, 2022. Any discussion? I will say Ms. Garmo's here in the audience this evening, and most of us got a chance to say hi. We appreciate you coming and volunteering for this important board. Assuming it passes here. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Crainga?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Ms. Garmo, and again, thank you. We appreciate that. That concludes mayoral appointments this evening. There are no city council appointments, so we'll move on to I-2, board and committee nominations. I'm going to pass on any mayoral nominations this evening. I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt for council nominations.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the nomination of Matthew Martin, it says in the agenda, to the Liquor Advisory Committee for the term expiring January 31st, 2025.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that we approve the nomination of Matthew Martin to the Liquor Advisory Committee for the term expiring January 31st, 2025. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Crainga?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, motion carries. That concludes city council nominations this evening. We move on to I3. There's no request for closed session. So I4 is up next, proclamations and congratulatory certificates, and that'll be introduced by our Assistant City Manager, Bob Bruner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have a memo in the packet. You also have a revision at the table. But let me just go through and kind of talk about what the proposed change would do. So reading it in terms of kind of bullet points, first is proclamations may be issued to recognize individuals, events, and organizations in Troy. Proclamations will not be issued to recognize individuals, events, and organizations outside Troy. And then I included a sentence, however, proclamations may be used to promote international, national, and other public awareness campaigns related to health, safety, and welfare if the request is made by a Troy community member. So at the last meeting, we had talked a little bit about weeks like, recognition of like Welcoming Week and Arbor Day. And there was a few other weeks I was thinking about when I wrote this, things that council has recognized in the past, like National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week, Public Service Recognition Week, and other things that are kind of specifically city related. So I try to include something in there that would leave the door open for that, but obviously you can take that sentence or leave it if you think it opens the door too widely. And then the last part is that proclamations regarding ideology, politics, or religion will not be issued. So that's a summary of the proposed language. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate the work on this for several months, obviously, and some potential changes now, and trying to have the language that most represents our consensus from the last meeting. Any questions for Bob? I guess I do have a question. So the yellow sheet that's on our table, it has that sentence struck out, the however language, talking about the promoting international, national, and other public awareness campaigns. Is that the replaced language for I4 if we were to approve I4, the resolution as it stands, or does there need to be an amendment?
That would be the replaced language, so you don't need to amend it.
Okay, so I'm going to move I4, proclamations and congratulatory certificates, as printed in the agenda packet and supplemented by the yellow sheet on the table now with that sentence struck out.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that we approve I4, again, as printed in the agenda packet with the supplemental yellow sheet on the table with the stricken language. Any discussion? I'm sorry. Yeah, seconded by Councilmember Abraham. I said it. Discussion? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. Again, thank you, Bob, and everyone, of course, but I know there's been a lot on this. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks to Cindy Stewart and City Clerk Dixon for their input as well.
I suppose, no, of course. Thank you, Cindy and Aileen. All right, next up is I5. Those rules are in effect immediately, right? Not that it matters, but when we, just out of curiosity?
Typically, we have it at the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. It doesn't apply, but for some reason I thought that popped into my head. I5 is a bid waiver, HAAS alert, Safety Cloud Advanced Collision Prevention System, Fire Department, and that'll be introduced by our Fire Chief, Pete Hollinger.
Yes. Mayor, City Council, good evening.
Good evening.
As the mayor said, yeah, it's a bid waiver for HAAS Alert Safety Cloud Advanced Collision Prevention System. So now the big question, what is that? So real quick, it's a physical device installed in all our fire trucks and staff vehicles that when they activate the emergency warning lights, send a signal to the Safety Cloud system, which then sends it to devices like Waze, Apple Maps, Stellantis, has signed on and is now pushing this information to all their vehicles. So it's similar if you've used Waze or those devices where it drops a pin on there or says somebody marks there's a police officer ahead. This automatically puts our fire trucks on there and then sends warning to people that are using the devices. So the hope with this is that they either slow down, move over, or avoid the area altogether. Several other major car manufacturers have signed on and will be implementing this as well as Google Maps, they said, is in the works. So we're going to continue to see this type of technology advance. We're given the opportunity to get in early on this. It's something that unfortunately we can't say how many accidents did we avoid, but if we avoid one, it pays for itself. So, any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Hollinger? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Abraham.
I'll move I-5 bid waiver, Haas Alert, Safety Cloud Advanced Collision Prevention System, Fire Department, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-5 bid waiver Haas Alert Safety Cloud Advanced Collision Prevention System Fire Department as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? I'll just say thanks to Chief for bringing this to us. I think it's another thing anything we can do to help improve the safety of our city and help the fire department, I think, is something we're always willing to support. At least I am, for sure. So the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is I-6, bid waiver, building management system controls and standard purchasing resolution 5, approval to expend budgeted funds, building management system upgrade and replacement. And that'll be introduced by Dennis Trantham, our facilities and grounds operations manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a request for a bid waiver through MCMI Automation. They've been a 20-year partner with us. They began working with us in 2002 as the designers of the building management system for the community center. Since then, we've brought on the Troy Public Library, the District Court, and then City Hall, Police Department as one unit. Like most technology, we have reached the end of the life for this software program, and Schneider Electric is who the parent company is. They provided a path forward to migrate a lot of the existing field controls over to the new system. So we're just requesting a bid waiver to expend capital funds on the project.
Thanks, Dennis. Any questions from council? Councilmember Hoderick?
I just wanted to make a comment regarding this item and the previous one. If somebody's watching a meeting for the first time, you may not realize the thorough memos we get as background, and I just wanted to say I really appreciate that. It makes perfect sense when you read that through, the rationale for proceeding, and I wanted residents and businesses who are watching to know we don't just willy-nilly support these things without doing a little homework before we come in here, and the staff does a good job of helping us do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Hoderick. Anyone else? Any questions? All right. Someone want to move this resolution? Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move I-6, bid waiver, building management system controls and standard purchasing resolution 5, approval to expend budgeted funds, building management system upgrade and replacement, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Brooks, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain Craig, that we approve I-6, bid waiver, building management system controls and standard purchasing resolution 5, approval to expend budgeted funds, building management system upgrade and replacement as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Dennis. Next up is I-7, resident budget priority study, and that'll be introduced by our Assistant City Manager, Bob Bruner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, for your consideration is an agreement with Cobalt Community Research to conduct what would be our fourth survey since the first agreement was approved in June 2020. We did a specific library survey, a resident benchmarking survey, and then you recently received the results of the business survey. And now we're going back to do another resident survey. This one is intended to be different from the last benchmarking survey, which was 6 pages long. This one would only be 4 pages long and would focus on what the residents' budget priorities are. Fortunately, we were able to get a very rough draft included with the agenda packet. So assuming you approve the agreement with Cobalt, we can then talk about the draft and get some input from City Council on what kind of questions you want to ask.
Thanks, Bob. So that's a question then. So approving I-7 approves the contract with Cobalt, but not the language of the draft
Correct.
study. Are you looking for us to discuss that draft this evening, or is there another opportunity when we would do that?
Input tonight would be great, and I plan to bring it back to City Council in 2 weeks as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Hamilton.
Do we have any kind of timeline when we'll get the results, or when this will go out, when we'll get the results? And
Yep. The plan right now is to actually develop the survey this month in July. Distribution would be in August. We'd get results back basically in September, and then results presentation in October before the advance that's scheduled in November.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, David. Additional questions? All right. Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Hoderick.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move I-7 Resident Budget Priorities Studied as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick and supported by Councilmember Hamilton that we approve I-7 Resident Budget Priorities Study as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Bob, is this the time when you'd like us to discuss and give you input on the draft?
I'd say go ahead and approve the agreement first, and then we could talk about the draft.
Does that work? Technically, I don't think it does. But
Technically, it would be like a council comment. I mean, technically, that would be the time
Okay.
agenda.
all right, we'll talk about it at council comments then. If that, I mean, I think the contract with Cobalt is just fine by me, but I do have some comments on the draft that we can talk about later during council comments, perhaps?
Sure.
Sound good?
Yep.
I'm here all night.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Dahl?
Thank you, Mayor. Alternatively, would it be helpful to get comments from us, like by email after the fact, or would it be better to discuss them here?
Both would be welcome.
Okay.
Yeah. And when we get to the part of the meeting where we talk about it, we can talk more about how we'll conduct.
Just remember, you opened that door, Bob.
Yeah.
So- No, that's, of course, good question, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, Councilmember Hoderick?
Just, you know, residents, again, who are watching this and wondering what this is our ability to reach out and really seek input in a meaningful way from across the board in the community as best we can. That really has helped us in the past, and the ability to, you know, yes, we're working to represent you every day, and we have contacts with people, we interact with as many residents as possible, but this survey process really allows us to reach people that maybe don't take the time to approach a council member or email, or I don't run into in Kroger, and we really do want to hear and represent as best we can. So it's the qualitative, the quantitative, it all comes together with a really thoughtful council and staff that gets tremendous value. It's a tool that we need to do our jobs well on your behalf, is my point.
That's a great point, and I'll just add, to me, this is money well spent for the city because it does give us a better opportunity to serve and represent our residents even better. In my opinion, it's a fantastic tool, and it has been very beneficial in the past. And if Cobalt's done a great job for us, so that's why I'm happy to support this evening. All right, vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. Discussion to be continued during council comments. Next up is the consent agenda. There are two late submittal items for J2A and J10 on the council table. Would anybody like to pull anything from the consent agenda this evening for discussion separately? Councilmember Abraham?
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda, including the two yellow sheets on J10 and J2A, in addition to everything else that's printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt, that we approve all items on the consent agenda, including the supplemental items for J2A and J10, as otherwise printed and included in the agenda packet. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here this evening on an item for the consent agenda, all have been approved. There are no memorandums and future council agenda items this evening. So next up is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have 3 people signed up this evening. First up will be Thomas Meitzler. So a reminder, according to our rules, you have 3 minutes, and there's a friendly timer here. When the light turns yellow, that means you have 1 minute left, and when it turns red, your 3 minutes are up, and we ask you to discontinue speaking.
Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to brief you this evening. My name's Tom Meitzler. I'm the current president of the Troy Tennis Club. For 30 years or more, we've been using it with great happiness, the Bolin tennis courts. And we've been running on the basis of it being a drop-in, what we call drop-in mixed tennis play. And we usually have been playing on Wednesdays from 5 to 9 and Saturdays from 10 to 1. Our membership total is somewhere between 100 and 150. It's been fluctuating due to COVID recently, and also some changes in the policy of the bowling courts. We have heard from the recreation department that there's a lot of pressure to use the courts, and I understand that they've recently been repaved, so they're a lot nicer now. But I've also heard that there's pressure from pickleball players, and to tell you the truth, I've only seen pickleball players there once in the past month or so. And I brought a demonstration. Bring those balls. One of the reasons I think there are very few pickleball players there is I just want to show the council and the mayor. This is a common tennis ball. This is a pickleball. It's basically a wiffle ball. And if you play it on an outside court, the wind's going to blow it around like anything. I'll leave these for the council. They want to check them. My wife is an avid pickleball player, and she goes up to the Lifetime Fitness Club just a little bit further north on Crooks Road, where they're indoor courts, and it's a lot easier to play there. But we're perfectly willing to include membership for pickleball players. It could be the Troy Tennis Pickleball Club. We're actively seeking more members all the time. We're trying to include more seniors. And the thing about the seniors is they like a set schedule. They like to know that they can come to a certain place at a certain time and play. And that's what the Troy Tennis Club has offered them in the past 30 or 35, 40 years. You all have the charts that I circulated. Bottom line up front is what we'd like to do is work with the Recreation Department and the city manager to find a path forward so that we can get a permit to the court. If that means operating as a league, fine, we will try that and see if it works. It's just been hard for us to make a change so rapidly after running it the way we have for 35 or 40 years. Do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Meitzler. Mr. Agarwal has signed up separately, so we'll let him take his time, and your time's up anyway. So we appreciate you coming forward, and call on Mr. Agarwal for next.
Thank you very much. It's been my first time here, so I really thank you very much. It's been my first time here, so I really appreciate it. I'm really impressed with the setup, everything. I just want to add, I'm part of the same group. We as a group has been existing for a very long time, and year after year, every summer, we would apply for the this limited hours court time, and we have been doing that up until the COVID hit us. So now we are requesting the same to be able to continue. We got senior members. We do it for the health purposes. We go out and play in the fresh air, and we go out and we see there is literally nobody else there for courts are freely available. It's just that we are unable to reserve them as of right now, and that kind of dissuades some of our existing members to come and join. So that's what we are requesting, to give us the permission to have just about 4 hours on Wednesday and 3 hours on a Saturday. So that's the request. And again, if there is any city requirements as to play it in a certain format, we are willing to work. There is no such issues, but we would like to have the time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir, for coming forward this evening. Just as part of our rules, we accept all public comment first, and then we have an opportunity to respond and reply. So go ahead and take your seat. We have another person signed up, and then we can talk a little bit if anyone. Next up is, Vinod is here. Vinod, come on forward. He wears the same uniform every time.
Hope it's not the lifetime uniform. So thank you. Before I start, can I circulate this?
If you hand them to our city clerk, she'll make sure we get them. So yeah.
And Mayor, actually, while you're taking a break, I believe that the city clerk did not get a copy of that last attachment, so we need to make sure that there's at least one copy.
Okay. She can have mine. Thank you. All right, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, thank you. Even though time is running, but I don't think I need that much time. Basically, it's an invitation. So I'm here to officially invite, and I have the cover letter with the invitation and the flyer that we have. It's a Michigan Cricket Championship tournament that's going to be on the July 23rd and 24th. They came here the last time. I'm officially here inviting beloved Mayor, Mr. Baker, and honorable City Council members, and Troy administration, Mr. Mark Miller and others, and especially Kurt Bowensep and Brian Gall and Mr. Mercer to be there. And it would be a nice honor and privilege for us to see you guys over there. And I think if you guys can show up, that would basically tell the story to the people that Troy is supporting cricket, and which you have exhibited in the past. It will be another opportunity for us to showcase that we are doing everything in supporting cricket. And that's why I'm here to invite. And I have the RSVP. If you can do that by a week in advance, it will help us to plan things ahead. And thank you for the opportunity to invite you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. Appreciate that very much. We'll take a look at this for sure. That concludes those who've signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now's an opportunity for City Council or City Administration to respond and reply. I'm going to start with City Manager Miller.
I have met with some representatives of the tennis organization, and I didn't get anything in writing yet from them, but there was discussions about wanting to increase the possibilities at Bowling Park, but also the possibility of increasing the facilities. And we're just starting to talk, and that's where we're at. I mean, we don't have in our Parks and Recreation plan to expand tennis facilities necessarily, and so we want to figure out if we're going to look at this, where would be the best place to do it. And I would like more information about what's desired, because I don't have any information.
Mark, are you talking about the Troy Racquet Club or this tennis organization expanding facilities?
Oh, I'm mixing them up.
You are. That's all right. They would go together.
No,
So
I have met with this group.
You've met with, I know you have.
And we offered to create a league at the
So
same time. And I never heard back from that group.
Okay, so I did hear from Mr. Meisler tonight that they're willing to consider that and look into that, because I think they'd really take a chance on that to try it out, right? So what's the best way to coordinate that moving forward? Is that with you or with Brian?
Brian, cool.
Okay. So reach out to Brian and,
So maybe to clarify, what this organization had historically been given exclusive use of tennis courts. And what we wanted to do is organize it a little more and create like a class that you would sign up for. So it would be a dedicated time, and their group could sign up for this, for the lack of a better term, a tennis tournament club situation, so that would be organized by our recreation department.
Right.
Which would include application and a nominal fee for residents and not different fee for non-residents.
okay. Okay. Anyone else have any additional comments on that? I know we talked a little bit about this when we had a memo that came from city management initially. I'm hopeful that we can all work together and make it work for your organization and for the resident and non-resident players as well. I have faith that it will work out really well, so I'm hopeful. And please do reach out to Brian Gould. And if he's not watching tonight, let him know that we all talked about it. So anyway, all right, thank you. That concludes City Council and City Administration response and reply to public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. There are no council referrals this evening, so we'll move on to reports. Anybody have any discussion or comments relating to any of the reports? I will just thank the city attorney and her office for a, once again, very comprehensive litigation report. It's very helpful. Thank you for that. All right, next up is council comments. I'd like to propose that we start with council comments directly related to the survey, just so we can get that out of the way. Is that, Bob, do you want to, or Mark, do you want to tee anything up for that?
Yeah, I would like to say something. I know that we had a question about what's the best format. Because as soon as you give us comments today, you'll probably will think of something before the next meeting. So we would like for you to have discussion this evening and then send your comments to myself and hopefully get that into our office the Wednesday before the council meeting.
Thank you. Bob, did you have anything to add?
I'd like to just kind of briefly introduce what is actually before you tonight. You've all met William St. Amour from Cobalt at this point, so when he comes to present the results, in the beginning of the process, basically he sends us what he calls like a straw man survey, where it's got a bunch of general questions, and then it's our job to kind of make them Troy specific. So this one says draft 3 on it because it's gone back and forth a couple times to get some of the Troy specificity you see in the first several questions. But I would say it's still pretty rough. The first page is got Troy specifics. The Parks and Rec questions, recreation staff did have a brief opportunity to provide some input on this before we had to get it ready for the agenda tonight. But then as you get into some of the questions in like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, these are just kind of the raw material that William sent in that first straw draft. So in the interest of getting keeping the process moving and trying to get the survey developed in July, we wanted to present you what we have tonight to start to get some feedback. And like Mark said, certainly written feedback is welcome at any point between now and the next agenda deadline, which is the Wednesday before the next city council meeting. But so that's where we're at in terms of how this has been developed. I also will have more city staff, more city department heads will have an opportunity to provide input on the next draft as well.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. And like I said, I appreciate Cobalt very much. I think they do a very good job with their surveys, or they have the past few, and I have no doubt that the final draft will be one that'll provide a lot of information for us at this table and for all of you in city management. Comments from council to start a ball rolling? Anyone brave? Mayor Pro Tem Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to clarify, without having to read all the fine print in the contract, excuse me, is this going to be a randomized group as in the past, where they select people and send out? Because it talked about e-blasts and text messages. Are those all going to the same randomized group, or is there multiple sources?
That's a good question. There will be a mail distribution to 2,000 households. That'll be a random sample. And that's how we select those 2,000s is something that we should talk about at some point in the process, not necessarily tonight. The last resident survey, we did recent voters, and the results skewed older and whiter, the respondents were, because that's who votes. It's not the same kind of broad demographic of the community. So we can use recent voters again for this survey, with the understanding that, you know, there may be parts of the community that are underrepresented, or we may decide you know, to use a different list to randomize from. So you don't have to decide that tonight, but once that is decided, it's a 2,000 is the sample size that'll be distributed via mail. People can also go online and do it. And then separately, there's the non-sample that anybody can complete the survey. And then when you get the results, you'll see side by side, this is what the sample response was, and this is what the non-sample response was. And based on the previous surveys, they actually track pretty closely. We did not, for example, see library enthusiasts skew the non-sample survey results when we did the library survey.
Thank you, Bob.
And that was kind of going to be my follow-up question. There is going to be a separate where, you know, you have the randomized sample, which is good. That's more scientific. It gives a better picture, assuming we can figure out the demographics of it. But then we're going to open it up to the general public. Will we be posting on social media or something to let people know that this is out there so they can look for it?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll promote it every way possible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for the good questions. Councilmember Hamilton?
Thank you, Mayor. I like how in question 20, it kind of asks what residents are willing to pay for the things that they want. We saw that with the library millage, and that was really helpful to kind of figure out how exactly to get that going. But one thing I'd like to see is, I know our city has major capital needs, particularly with facilities. And a lot of those facilities residents will never see. And just if they were to say, you know, what are your priorities to residents, they're probably not going to volunteer that, even though it's a deep need, especially for us to attract a workforce in the future. City Hall needs major repairs. So I'd like to see something that kind of presents that to the survey taker, and then ask them, knowing what the needs are here, what are you willing to pay to, you know, support that, based on what we think might be the need may be. So something like that more specifically nails that down, because I want to get a sense of that. Because if we present that and then they say zero, I mean, that would be very telling. But if they're willing to invest, you know, some money into that to help our facilities, that would be helpful. So I don't know exactly how to craft that language, but that's kind of what's floating in my head, is from our advance last year. That was a very pressing need, and I want to make sure that's specifically addressed in this.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. I'm right there with you. A little more to add to that in a little bit, I think. Additional questions, comments? Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga.
Thank you, Mayor. To that point just shared by Councilmember Hamilton, is I had the same thought. As you opened up the survey, you read some of those kind of big picture questions that are important, and then literally about 2.5 pages are devoted to Parks and Rec, which I know that's where there's a lot of need, but I don't want residents to feel confused why there's so many questions. I know there's a little language before that Parks and Rec section that talks about how, of the general fund, only 20% is remaining, after, of course, the important, amount of funds that go towards public safety, 20% for things like Parks, Rec, Public Works. But it just seemed like 2.5 pages is a lot of pages on just kind of Parks and Rec. And so, and I just feel like that might start to feel long to folks. So I think, do we need all those questions? And then again, to the point made by my colleague, Councilmember Hamilton, is how do we get in some of these other bigger questions about City Hall and facilities? So, so that would be my input there. Second question is a little bit beyond the survey, but given this is such an important topic, and we did this with the library, is there a possibility that we could do focus groups like with the library as well? I know Cobalt did not run those, reran those. That is more the qualitative component that goes with this more quantitative aspect. I just wonder if that's something in the works that we could somehow have, even if not simultaneous, but somehow before that advent that we would have in November. So just some food for thought.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain. Kind of good stuff too. Right.
Mayor, just really quick, we really haven't talked about focus groups for this, but we'll give a little more talk and be a little more prepared to talk about when this comes back.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Additional comments? This side was quick. Nothing down here, huh? Councilmember Hoderick?
I guess, building on the Parks and Rec comments and the facilities comments, the truth is our residents have talked to us in general terms and in resident terms about green space and parks. It's maybe not always in the language that we use specifically in our budget and what we're wrestling with, but very specifically, they're looking to be competitive with cities around us. And I think sometimes they don't understand why we're not. So surveys can often be a communication piece that where we indicate and we can maybe prioritize. There's things we just haven't done because we never brought it back after the downturn in the mid-2000s. Our recreation department took a huge hit, and we are still trying to build that back. And our residents don't necessarily know and understand that. So I don't have, and I can think about this more and ponder it more and give further communication, but I think generally speaking, we know our residents are seeing that. They're seeing that recreation, they comment on it. We see it on Nextdoor, we see it in our day-to-day activities. At least I think I do. Am I right? Am I right? Okay. So knowing that, I think also being able to convey that it's a challenge. We have a challenge to now catch up, frankly. And I don't know what that language looks like, but as we look at catching up, what are residents willing to support? What is it that they think are the priorities? Pickleball and tennis have come up a lot. But I think there's other things out there that we aren't necessarily hearing about. What are they willing to support? We heard a lot about our aquatic center when we were looking at how much do we invest in that facility. We went ahead and put money into it. It gives us some time, but frankly, it's going to take money. So how much do we value that? I think these are some of the things I would like to drill down. In terms of public safety, we know that's a priority. I mean, I don't want to imply in any way in this survey that we're not looking at that as a priority. And I think being able to convey that somehow in the questioning and the language is we don't want to create any misleading thought that we don't value that and we have not prioritized that in the budget, because we have not had any discussion of doing anything other than that going forward. And our roads, so I want to be careful. Sometimes a survey can become a communication tool that can trigger misinformation. And I think all of us have to be looking at this with that in mind. And just be careful that it is a helpful tool to us and not another challenge we have to overcome once the survey goes out. So that's a general comment and I'll try to go through it and be more specific in the feedback.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. You all are saying things that I'm feeling. Don't worry, I'll still reiterate. Any other, Councilmember Abraham?
Mayor, I want to piggyback off of what Councilwoman Hoderick said, because I really like how you framed it up, which is we need to communicate in a way that residents can understand, because they're not necessarily in the city's budget all the time like we are. And so, I'll provide more specific feedback, but, when we ask the questions, we need to put it in terms that are practical to them. So like some of the questions about, how close do you live to a park? How many minutes to walk to it? Well, if you've got kids and you're hauling their soccer stuff, you're not walking to the park, you're driving to the park. So thinking about how someone might use it and how they get there is something that we need to think through. Or what, 20% for general government services, well, what does that really mean? We know 60% goes towards, safety, fire, emergency services, and 20% for recreation. Well, what's that other 20%? It might sound like fluff when it's really important stuff that's in there too. And then the willingness to pay. I do like how it's put on, how much would you be willing to pay per month? We may want to think through, is there a way we could maybe translate that into mills? Because that's something that some people might respond to as well. They can see the translation, oh, $15 a month is X amount of mills. Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. I think those are the type of things that are swirling around in my head when I look at the survey, which, by the way, I think this is a great draft. You can't have pointed conversation like this unless you have something really meaty to look at. And so I really thank you for including it in here. And I think it won't take a whole lot more work for it to be in really, really good shape. So thanks, Bob. I know you put a lot of work into all of these surveys, and we've gotten great results from Cobalt, from you, from the staff here. So I'm looking forward to a good 4 out of 4 results.
Thanks, me too.
Thanks, Councilmember Abraham. Councilmember Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. So one thought I had I agree with a lot of the sentiments of my colleagues. One thought I had was when we presented the library millage, we kind of also presented like, this much will get you this much will get you this much will get you this. Like we had kind of talked about potentially like a tier type of system, like if you're willing to pay this, you could get this. And so I don't know, I know this is very broad and it's kind of just looking at the city as a whole and what the priorities are, but kind of thinking about that as well, I thought was very helpful. It kind of, this is the Cadillac, this is the, this is, so I think that that's terms that the residents can understand, and that information was very valuable as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Appreciate that. Those were very helpful. They were very helpful and also very specific to a library millage renewal, which I think is a little different here than where we're at. And that's kind of where I'm at. I do appreciate, Bob, all the work that goes into these surveys and trying to fine tune everything and taking 7 of us talking plus so many staff members in advance last November and trying to deal with everything else that happens, proclamations, for example, getting to this point. As much as I appreciate the work, I'm struggling a little bit because I don't feel like this draft of the survey is really representative of where we've been from a consensus standpoint or the discussions we've had. Certainly, there's been some talk about looking into potential parks and rec millage as a potential option. We've seen that consistently in some of the reports coming from the city management's office after our advance, especially. In fact, it might even be mentioned in the report on the city manager status report that's in here tonight. But to the best of my memory, I don't think any of us have really ever talked about a public safety millage and focusing on that. It is our top priority in the city and has been for a long time, and there's no reason to think otherwise. And so I share Councilmember Hoderick's concern, certainly, that sending something out asking about that makes it look like either we're not properly funding something now or it's on the table as something that won't be. And that's not at all a true statement, in my opinion. So I struggle and question leading with something like that. It's, as we've talked about before, when we used to do our strategies or list of things we want to do in the year, whatever you want to call them, we always struggled with, do we need to put public safety on there? Because obviously that's our number one priority always, right? But it's that same kind of thing. If you don't mention it, it seems like maybe it's not a priority, but if you do mention it, it seems like it is called into question. So how we address and fine tune that. So I have concerns about that for sure. The other aspect is, and it's been brought up first by Councilmember Hamilton and then almost by everybody else, is lacking from any of this is a discussion or questions related to facilities and potential bonding issues. And to me, that seemed like something that many of us were quick to look at as something we want to explore. And I don't know if it's something that Cobalt doesn't believe is easily translatable into a survey for residents, or if it's city management's got another plan to present information on that down the line to us or not. But to me, I'm personally far more comfortable looking at bond financing for facilities as a means of potential revenue to add to the city to help invest our infrastructure than some of these other options that are loosely being discussed by the terms of this survey. That's me, one of 7. I understand that. But I know that from previous conversations and certainly from our advance, we talked a lot about bonding. We talk about our AAA bond rating. We talk about the fact that it would have been smarter to do that probably a year ago and cheaper for us as we look at what's happened in the economy. But these are things that I think are really lacking, and I do think it can be successfully translated somehow to our residents that this is something that we should consider also. And I do also understand municipal finance is complex and also strangely simple at that you get money in one source, it frees up money in other places, but I'm very hesitant to obviously do anything that is gimmicky or is a shell game of funds. I want to make it very clear and transparent what we're doing and what we're using any funds for if we're going out to our residents for anything. And I'm deeply aware of the history of this city and how things can get used and what can happen, both good and bad, with communication in our city. So bonds, I think that should be added somehow, or some discussion of facilities and how that would relate. And I also, at the State of the City address in May, I talked about how because of Prop A and Headley and inflation, today we collect about $15 million less a year than we did 15 years ago or 16 years ago. So obviously the city's in a different financial shape than it was then. And we've done a really good job, and I don't mean we, I mean we and previous councils and previous everybody, of making the most of a diminishing bank account, essentially. And Councilmember Hoderick talked about, you hear residents say, well, how come you don't have this like Sterling Heights does? Or how come you don't have this like Rochester Hills does? And it's because they've invested in it over the past couple of years, and they do it either with dedicated millages or they've raised funds other ways, but it's because their residents are paying for it, essentially. And we need to find a way that is palatable for our community to look at taking care of the things we need to in this city, because we know if we don't do something soon, and I'm talking about facilities probably more specifically than some of the recreational operational needs, but if we don't do something soon, it's going to cost exponentially more down the line, and I don't think that's a football any of us want to hand off to any future members of council, or same with city staff. So it's a serious issue that needs to be addressed. I think this survey can go a long way, but to me it needs to be very clear in the communication messages and strategies that are going out with it, and it does need to address some of the things we've talked about, like facilities and bonding as a potential option in a way, and I'm confident that Cobalt can craft language that is clear to residents. And then I think based on those results we can look at, the Cadillac options and those kind of things. But I think that's a little bit down the line, if at all. And my hope is that before our advance in November, that we're able to use this information that we get from a survey and also look at some actual numbers as with financials and things like that. I think that is the goal, or otherwise it won't do us any good, I guess. But that would be my hope and understanding. And all that said, I do appreciate Bob and Mark, the work that goes into these and working with Cobalt. And I have been very happy as, I don't know if it was Edna that said, make this 4 out of 4 as far as successful research or surveys. But I think we can do that. I think we're a little bit off where we should be with this draft.
You all bring up some good points, and there's some background that we can talk more about at the next meeting. This survey is building off the 2021 survey. And the 2021 survey, we asked questions about budget priorities. And the top budget priority was police services, followed by fire services, parks, and street conditions. We also know that from that survey that satisfaction with police and fire is very high, so we don't necessarily need to increase spending on them. The satisfaction level with parks and recreations and some of the other amenities were lower, which is why there's more questions about those things. We did ask questions about potential future services and amenities, and we heard popular things were walking and biking trails, street maintenance, farmers market, and a winter sports area. So some of these questions are intended to drill down a little more finely into and build on what we did in 2021. But certainly, we're not ignoring public safety. And the first page, basically includes all the major things that the city does. And then what services we choose to kind of drill down and ask more questions about that's why we're here to talk about the survey, and appreciate the notes about asking about capital and bonding and those sorts of things. But we started with the focus on Parks and Rec because that's kind of picking up from the last survey. But we can certainly ask about those other issues as well.
Thank you. I mean, and obviously from a standpoint of if there was facilities funding specified in bonding, that potentially frees up capital to also go to our parks and recreation programs in a different way too. So it's not that it's one or the other, right? I mean, that's the clear, there's, like I said, municipal finance, there's a lot of things going on. I just want to make sure that we're all trying to move on the same page and direction. And again, I appreciate that background information too, Bob. Anything else? Is that a half hand?
No.
No? Okay.
I'll save it for later. That's okay.
Save it for later?
For email and next.
Okay.
Still have some thoughts today.
Okay, that's very good. How about other council comments unrelated to the survey? Councilmember Hodering.
Yeah, I'm kind of going back to the questions and the ideas coming on the tennis club from Mr. Meitzler. You just heard us talking about the history and what we're trying to rebuild and fine tune. I think you all you have this experience of 30 years, and I want to say probably about the past 10 or 15, that process has worked. What I shouldn't speak for administration, but what I think I'm picking up on is a recreation department that is truly diving into how do we fine tune, hone, make better what we're doing. And you find yourselves caught in that. What they're doing to try to make something more efficient, run more effectively. We had some years there where things got a little willy-nilly here in the city. And council since then have said we want to really run a tight ship. That's what I think you're coming up against. Coming out of COVID, it's the perfect time to give things a fresh look and do them more efficiently. It may not feel that way though if you've been involved in something for 30 years, but I think that's what your experience, and I just want to express my appreciation for your willingness to talk it through, and know that's kind of the spirit of it. We're trying to make things more efficient and more available to more people, and it's tough. The pickleball folks, the cricket folks also came to us and said, hey, we've been waiting for a long time for this. Well, we had to delay, and they've been very patient as we kind of just get those gears turning again, and work it through. And I really appreciate the constructive ways all three of you seem to be willing to work with us. We're trying to make it really good, solid work, well-run, well-oiled machine again. And that's a challenge. So you're going to be an important part of that, is my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional council comments? All right. There is no one signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. We have no closed session this evening, so with that, we're adjourned.